Evet, herkese tekrar merhaba. Bugünkü
Hi
ikinci otur...
everyone, welcome back. Today's second session will be presented by Jacki Vause. She is the CEO of Dimoso. She is especially will be talking about the indies who want to expand their studios and the basics of PR. Now I'd like to invite her.
Hi, Jackie. Hello. Welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you. And hello,
Nice to meet you
everybody.
too. How are you? How is your day going?
Very good, very good. We're launching some businesses and a game this week. So it's all very busy this week.
Nice. You are free to start whenever you want.
Okay,
So,
great. I'll go slowly because I do appreciate that I'm not a Turkish speaker, unfortunately. So let's see if I can share my screen. Good. 1 second. It should be sharing. It's taking its time.
yeah, I think it's loading.
Here we go. Right.
Okay, we can see it now.
Good. Okay. So I'll just fire away if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So hello everybody. Pleased to virtually meet you. And I'm hoping and praying that you're all staying safe and well in these difficult times. And it's a pity that we can't meet in person. But those are the breaks. And in my case, it's quite a privilege to be able to present to you in Turkey. I probably wouldn't have been able to get out to see you this year. So this is absolutely exciting for me to come and talk to you about PR, which is my specialist subject area. So who am I? Um, I'd like to think I'm a games PR expert. I've been working in games PR for many, many years. I stretch it into decades, unfortunately, showing my age. I own a business like a lot of you, and I have actually been a developer of my own games, and I've advised many companies about the development of their games. Both from a gaming and from a PR perspective. And that's something that makes my experience quite unique because I've not only talked the talk, but I've actually walked the walk and I have been in an independent developer's shoes. And my team call me the mother of dragons. We're very, very we put out a lot. Our output is enormous, and we like to make sure that anything we do has the impact of dragons. So Dimoso, actually, the name stands for digital, mobile, and social, because those were the places that I felt that people would be communicating upon on digital platforms, on mobile platforms, and on social platforms. Now, I named our company many, many years ago, and I'm so pleased that that actually turned out to be the case and that I was right taking that risk. But interestingly, now I wish I'd put gaming in as part of that, because that's where also people are talking and having dialogues and being sold to within games. But these are the games companies that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with. People like, you'll recognize some of these names, some you won't recognize. There's a few larger companies like Siemens and GE and Panasonic. And I've worked with very, very different types of organizations, right through from working with Jeff Immelt at GE at the highest levels, where I helped put together the Imagination at Work campaign, right through to working with Disney and Warner, Also down to working with Turkish companies, which is always a pleasure. And we worked with Gram Games right from startup, from very early days of 1010, and built them up to the time that they'd set up their London office, and then they obviously sold to Zynga. So, you know, we have a very extensive range of games knowledge, going from all types of genres of games. So whether you're talking about MMOs, casual, hyper casual, mid-core, community card games, you know, anything is basically what we've handled. A lot of that work's been on mobile, but we've worked with console and a little bit of PC as well. So, and we find that a lot of people nowadays are looking at launching, starting with mobile and then taking things out to PC. So there's definite trends that we've seen. When I first started, we were working with console games companies who were trying to change their games into mobile games and not finding that very easy at all. That's a whole different story. So what I wanted to talk to you about today was really looking at PR from the ground up, because I'm a great believer in the fact that independents can do a lot of their own PR. They don't necessarily need to employ an expert like me to spend their sort of hard-earned cash on. And I'm often approached by independent developers to do their PR, and I often tell them their money is probably better spent on user acquisition or in-game work to start off with. And I often tell them the sort of things I'm going to tell you today, how to do it yourself. So the things we're going to go through are, I want to throw out a few PR myths that you might be thinking about. I want to talk to you about how PR really does increase value, and what the difference is between nice to have and must have, precious versus priceless, and how you yourself can drive your own PR. I would love companies at any stage to make sure that PR is at the heart of what they're doing. So hopefully you'll get some ideas here. And if you do, feel free to come and talk to me or contact me via Indieway or LinkedIn or whatever method, in my personal email, which is jacki@dimoso.com. And I'm happy to talk you through some of your own personal situations. So let's talk about PR myths. So one of the first ones I always hear, which drives me mad, is that PR is just for big companies with big budgets. And that is really not the case. You'll find that a lot of small companies have actually built their business on good PR. And one of the great things about working with Mehmet and Sedef at the team at Gram Games was that they really understood that they were just as they had just as much right with being a small company with a small budget. From at the time, Turkey wasn't really recognized as a games hub, should have been, but wasn't. Now Turkey is really, catching everyone's attention. And I do think that, the smaller companies could really benefit from doing a bit of PR for themselves, riding that crest of a wave, which is Turkey's emergence as a really, really strong player on the game scene. Now, another thing I often hear is, I don't have anything to say, and that's rubbish. Everybody's got something to say. And, it's kind of working out what you'd like to say. And I'll give you some hints and tips about how to do that. To do PR, I need an expert. Well, I think I've already spoken about that. You don't need an expert. It's actually a lot of common sense, and it's much easier than you think. And a lot of people are a bit worried that they might make a mistake. There's only certain things that get you into trouble with PR. Lying is one of them. Not telling the truth we call it PR spin. And that can be leaving out some details that you don't want to say. That's not necessarily lying, but most of it is common sense, understanding why you're in business, why you're building demand, and then being able to explain your story. And I'll come on and I'll give a few examples of that later. If you can't measure it, there's no value. Now, we come from a world of metrics. Everything in performance marketing really almost stemmed from games. I mean, games has led apps, the world of apps, and all sorts of social engagement in terms of the way it's measured, in terms of the way UA is measured and retention is measured and the analytics we have. And it's true to say that PR is immeasurable. It's only when you experience its impact that you really see the value of it. And it's a very difficult thing to put a value to. In old days, we used to measure PR value by comparing it with what an advert would have cost in a publication. And what our article that we placed in the publication would be, and they called that ad equivalency values. It's something, but it's very difficult to explain, and certainly it's any advertising from a PR perspective is not as impactful. Media coverage drives downloads. Well, it doesn't. And if you speak to anybody who tells you that PR will drive your downloads, it really will not. I've had articles in the Wall Street Journal, in USA Today. I've had things on BBC Click and CNBC. They did not create a massive spike in downloads. But in terms of what you're doing with PR, you're actually driving your organic growth and you're supporting your organic growth. PR is nice to have rather than must have. Well, of course, I'm going to disagree with that. I think that when you're actually looking at promoting your game, your business, any of the messages that you want to put across have to be consistent and impactful right from the start of anything that you do. So PR should actually sit at the center of everything you do in terms of communications. And then another myth is I don't know how to do a press release. Again, it's very simple. A press release is literally just informing a fellow human being what your company is doing and when it's doing it and how it's doing it and why it's interesting. It's a really simple process to put together a press release. And if you follow some of the tips and hints I'm going to give you right now, it's very easy to do. And this famous man, Bill Gates, who spent a lot of money on PR and spent a lot of money on marketing, said that if it came down to his last dollar, he would spend it on PR. And that is a great testament. And you'll find a lot of very well-known business leaders would say exactly the same. Now let's look at where PR adds value. Here you can see the sort of the demonstrable and evidenced value. Investors, employees, recruits, partners, and of course your players are all the kind of people that you're going to be attracting and educating with the information that you put out. Now, one thing I've missed out here while I was talking was I didn't actually explain to you what PR really is. And PR in its olden description was all about the reputation of a company. And that still applies today. A lot of people get media coverage and media relations confused with PR. Media coverage and media relations are a very big part of PR, but they're not everything. PR is everything from creating your story, your message, the channels that you're going to send that across, the content that you're going to create with your story and your message. And media coverage is a very central part and a good end product of that process. Now, how that affects you would be if you're looking to gain investment, getting media coverage about your company and about your game is a really good way of convincing investors that you are credible business people with a good forward-looking plan. Employees love to see their work talked about. new recruits, and everybody is looking very hard for good talent. And they like to see a company that is recognized by the press as doing a really good job. Obviously, partners need to see that you're a credible player and you're, consistent and reliable, and media coverage gives that impression. And of course, your players like to see that they are part of a movement. They love to see, when Among Us sprang to global popularity, there was huge amounts of PR coverage and social media coverage about Among Us, and a lot of people loving and to see that they are part of that whole new game explosion. And also, when it comes to your own self, your personal PR is really, really important. Because you think, if you are really representing your company, and I'm thinking of owner founders here, you'll want to make sure that you are the face of the company and that you are saying all the right things and getting personally recognized. But equally, if you're an employee, you're making yourself more valuable because you're a proven credible asset. So let's look at the immeasurable and intangible things that having good media around you generates. So something that's immeasurable is that feeling, the perception, the bond that's created amongst individuals and corporations, the trust that you establish by being featured in the media. And that builds desire with people to know what you're doing, to know what you're saying, to understand where you're going. And obviously, people share things that they find that are interesting and companies that they find that are interesting. So these are all sort of very immeasurable and intangible things that you can't put a price on. And you can't really say, oh, we've got everybody feeling really good about us, unless you're doing stake in the ground research, which is expensive and not really something for indies. But this is the kind of thing that in your heart of hearts will help you build your brand. So how can you do this? And I always say to people, start with your story. So spend some time thinking about, what do you want people to know about you? What do you want them to know about your game, your company? What are the key things that make you stand out? What are the things that, when you're creating, you think, yeah, that's our kind of game? Then from that thought process, just jot down 2 or 3 key messages that you want to focus on. And I always tell people not to go with, how with game development, you can get into feature creep. Oh, I want a bit of this and I want a bit of that. I'm going to have some of this and I've got to have that. And that holds everything up. The same applies with PR. Some people have 15 things they want to say about their company, but it's too much information for people to take in. You've really got to be simple with your communication when it comes to press, and really hone down and focus on the 2 or 3 main things that you really want to get across in every communication. And I'm not just talking about press here. I'm talking about when you're presenting to investors. I'm talking about when you're presenting to your employees, to make them know why they're working for your company. Then tell your story. Where did you come from? How did you get here? What are you doing? Now, Mehmet from Gram Games had a great backstory. He'd been a shepherd. He had some really quirky things he could say. He had an amazing business story. They were literally down to their last pennies in the bank, didn't know where they were going to pay the next payroll from when they launched 1010, and they did an amazing job. And it was a real hero story that we told. I've heard of game developers in igloos. I've heard all sorts of different interesting stories, and to be honest, the more human, the better. I'm just about to launch a business that isn't a game. It's an e-tailing business, and that's all a lockdown story about people who started a business based on their passions when they were furloughed, and they had no jobs. And that lockdown story is very interesting to media, who like to see phoenix rising from the ashes of the pandemic. So think about your people, who are your founders, what are their backgrounds. I told you about Mehmet from Graham. There are lots of interesting things about different types of founders, and certainly if you look at I like to look at a lot of the Helsinki based games founders. They all have really interesting profiles. Look at some other founders and see what they're saying about themselves, and see what their story is, and get some inspiration there. And then your mission is really important. Think about what you're going to do. What's your intention? Is it to create amazing educational games for children to help them, with their grades? Is it to bring more social gaming to the market? There's a lot of things that, we can do with technology, and we forget to tell people about them. And it's really important that you make sure that people know what your intentions are as well. And then your game, what unifies your games. If you have a portfolio of games, what is what is the quirkiness of your users? I'm working with Pixel Federation at the moment. They're an amazing company doing some incredible games, and a lot of their games are steeped in transportation. Their players are absolute avid fans. And so their story is all based on their community and how they're feeding back and getting ideas from their community about the next levels in their games. So think about what your players are doing in the games and the type of games that you're creating. So how can you first drive this? Now, it is a bit time consuming, but it doesn't have to be desperately time consuming. But I'd like you to almost think of yourselves as being as your own publisher, being your own magazine on your own website. So the first thing, which is vital on any business, is your blog. You have to think about anything that you can start to say about your company, about your progress, about things that are interesting to your players. Start charting your progress with your blog. You can put on things like new events, people you've recruited, do your own interviews. And if you can bring in some video and some images, all the better. As much as anything, a good blog will drive SEO to your site. And developer diaries are really, really interesting for avid players. If you're going to do some pre-launch work, a blog is a very good place to do that. And you can also get guest posts from people, even from players, if you like. When I was talking to I'm going to go back there. When I was talking to Joachim at Elite Games Developers, and he's a co-founder of Next Games, he is an amazing man. He works with a lot of VCs, and his main tip for indies when it comes to their PR is that blogging is so underrated. He thinks it's the most cost-effective way to attract interest in the studio, and it's everything about you, and you control it, which is the other main important thing. When you're putting a story in front of a press person, they're writing a story about it, about you. That's their interpretation of what you're doing. With your blog, you can control your message, and it's a really good discipline to get into. Whenever I'm talking to people about doing their blogs, I'm saying to them, you mustn't just do one blog and leave it. You must have a plan, and plan to do, if it's just one blog a month, that's fine, but keep it consistent and keep the content going. So the other thing is participate. Now, one of the things you're doing is participating by actually being here, coming to events like Indieway, making sure that you are really actively seeking out events and places where you can be. But also the first place is to read the industry press. They'll tell you where the events are happening. And once you start to read the industry press, you know exactly the sort of things you should be telling them. You start to understand what they're interested in. You start to understand, you might even start to get angry that you're not being featured when they should be writing about you. So really when you read the press, start to think about how you might slot in, and then look at what those journalists are writing about. See their stories, read the stories, see what they're reporting on. You'll start to see some trends. At the moment, if you're reading VentureBeat or PG.biz, you'll see there's a huge trend around AI, around social gaming. Obviously, there's huge amounts of investment stories going on, and acquisition stories. And I've got a lot of thoughts about that, which I won't share now because we could be here for hours. But start to see where those stories are and start to think about how you could slot in. And when you feel that you've really got something that you could match things with a journalist, then contact them. It's very easy to get their details from the publications themselves. It's very easy to connect with them on Twitter or LinkedIn. A lot of journalists like to be contacted in a certain way and will give you details of how they like to be approached. I have journalists that on the head of their Twitter will say, just don't, tweet me, or just this, and they will, some of them are very prescriptive on the 5 steps of the information they want when they're being approached. So if you feel that you've gone through the due diligence and you understand what they're writing about and that they will be interested in you, go ahead and reach out to them and tell them why. Say, I've seen you write this article, or I've really enjoyed what you've been doing. I'd like to add this to your plate of knowledge. I've talked to you about attending events, entering awards as well. A lot of people are too shy, and you really should start to put yourself forward on the global calendar of awards and really start talking about yourself to the people who are giving out awards. Pocket Gamer does a lot of awards. They've now got their Launchpad event for new games that are just coming out. Take advantage of all of these platforms and do it in a process. Do it as a job title almost. Put somebody in charge of PR and say, right, you're going to read these journalists, you're going to get these publications, you're going to find out about these events, you're going to enter us for awards. Make somebody's job role within your organization if you can't do it yourself. Join the groups, join the Facebook groups, join the LinkedIn groups, join the Reddit sessions, join the forums, network as much as you can. It's amazing the tidbits you pick up. This industry is moving at such a pace. It's very hard to keep up. There are no hard and fast rules. And the other thing is listen to what people are saying about your games. Listen to your employees, listen to your immediate community, and they will tell you what they find interesting about what you're doing. They'll tell you what your USP is, and use that as part of those 2 or 3 messages that I was talking about earlier. And the other thing is that, and I mentioned this earlier, start to build your personal brand in line with a company brand or in line with a games brand. Tweet, write, blog, do what I'm doing, speak at events, get people to know you. These are all things about how you can drive your own PR. So what I wanted to do here was take a case study of something we've done very, very recently. Within the games industry, you know this, you're either games, or you have an ad network, or you have a SaaS. There are all sorts of different suppliers and developers and publishers in this wonderful industry of ours. And what I often find when I'm speaking to suppliers is they say, oh, the games press just writes about games. And that's not true. So Ludo is a platform it's an AI platform that helps people come up with ideas for games. Now, we all know, especially in hyper casual, coming up with a new idea is a really difficult thing. And we also know within the games industry that reinventing the wheel is a really hard thing to do. And a lot of success comes from staying with familiar formats and adding your own secret sauce and your own sparkle, whatever that would be. And what Ludo enables people to do is get away from that real hard slog of looking for images and words and ideas. And through AI, Ludo is literally like your own personal assistant. And I really felt like he was like a little dog that you say, here's the ball. This is what I want you to go and get for me. Go and fetch me that information. And Ludo comes back. And when we got together with Ludo, it was codenamed Prometheus. This platform was amazing. It was developed by a small developer who'd been struggling for ways to come up with their own games ideas. And they decided to develop this platform, and they recruited all the most amazing brains in AI from across the world. And this is a truly global platform. It's created by global brains from everywhere. So it's fabulous. So this is a nice quote from Tom about who's the founder of Ludo. He was actually Tom's a true entrepreneur. He set up the first ever online pharmacy in the USA. And now he's moved into games, which is great for us because he's got amazing experience. So what do we do, Ludo? So the first, I've just when you get this presentation, you can go back through this. I'm sure that the chaps at Indieway are going to send the presentation out to you. And when we first launched this platform, we wanted to just launch it in beta. We knew it worked. We knew it was really useful. But we needed to learn, because AI learns through more usage. And we needed to just recruit a few studios to see, what they felt about it, how we could improve it. And so that was the objective when we first launched in beta with Ludo. And the hope was that we would just sign those studios and be able to get some feedback. What actually happened was a bigger story altogether. Our main target was 10 or 15 studios to sign up for a free trial. What actually happened was we put together full preparation. We did a big branding exercise, and these are things that you can actually do yourself. We found a name. We called it the platform Ludo, which was Latin for I play. We found the URLs. We then built out the messages in very much the same way as I described to you. We found the 2 or 3 key messages that we wanted to put across. We created content. We did the website, the branding, and we did all of that within 7 days. It was a monumental feat. When we launched it, we basically we used a thing that I'm developing right now, a new PR platform that I'm developing called FounderLed Pitching. What I'm finding, especially in the pandemic, is that journalists love speaking to PRs. They love speaking to me when they can, when they've got time. They do like speaking to me because I am a bit more of an expert than your traditional PR. PR people are very good at helping you get your message across. But what they really, really want to find out is from the founder. They want to go straight to what we call the horse's mouth. I don't know whether that phrase translates in Turkey, but they want to speak to the person whose idea it was, whose concept it was, whose vision it is. And I'm increasingly finding that with a lot of the journalists that I work with. So I created this offering called FounderLed Pitching. Now, what that is I work with founders to help them create their personal messaging and their personal brand and articulate what they want to say. And then I help them identify the key press targets they want to talk to and make a connection with. And then they go and do that themselves. And that is very well received by the press, who find it doesn't waste their time. They know they're speaking to the right people. They can ask questions and get immediate answers. So that's a very powerful thing. And we use that with VentureBeat. And we got an amazing article that came out just about the beta of Ludo with VentureBeat. And so when we finished, we ended up getting I think it was, we've assigned definitely well over 150 studios now. So that was a 10 times KPI result. And it happened all very quickly. The other thing that we worked with them on was, and I mentioned partnerships earlier, we worked with the partnership with Pocket Gamer. And they're going to be doing a roundtable. If you're interested, look up on pg.biz. They're going to be doing a roundtable on how to come up with the next big game idea with other people from the industry, not just Ludo. There's 3 other companies joining, all with AI backgrounds. And AI is really, really fascinating. So I'd encourage you to go to that. And the other thing that we employed with that is obviously we're working towards leads. Now, very early on in this presentation, I said PR is not measurable. And I do try very hard to put some checks and balances and measurements and KPIs into any campaign that we work on. And I'm sure that that's something that you could do yourself when you are putting together PR campaigns, is to start to put together some targets and really aim at those targets, just as you would do with any kind of outreach initiative. So these are my ending notes. PR is an investment. It does take some time. And it takes more time and thought than it does actually take money. PR budgets are historically a minuscule amount compared to the vast amount of UA budgets, but I would go as far as to say they are so valuable. And when you're doing it yourself, you will see when you start to get some recognition in the press how much value that is. But it will take a bit of time and it will take a bit of thought. UA brings downloads and PR brings value. Start thinking about PR early. It's something that's often just left as a nice to have. At the very least, start your blog, and just never underestimate the power of PR. I gave you a case study there about Ludo. He genuinely didn't think that the PR would get him any more than his 10 or 15 studios to try the platform. He's been overwhelmed by the interest and the appetite for AI, and actually the need for PR. And what it's actually done is that when this platform was launched, we thought it was going to be a very high value AI offering that was going to cost studios $400-500 a month. Now, because of the absolute volume and popularity he's seen, he's going to be able to bring that pricing model way down to, like, $20 a month, because of the volume of approaches that he's had from people to try the platform out. So it really is a very valuable tool used well. So now it's over to you. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
We have a question from Görkem. He says, what is the common PR mistakes we should avoid? Is there really such a thing as bad PR for video games?
Well, that's 2 questions really. I'll start with is there such a thing as bad PR? Yes, there is. And the problem is nowadays with PR is that whatever message you put out stays out there. It's very difficult to get rid of content that's gone out on the internet. And a lot of people are hesitant to do PR because of that, because they feel that their business models might change. They might want to do something different. They haven't cast themselves in stone, and they feel that PR might hold them back from being able to have that freedom and get them classified in a certain genre or way. And my only advice with that is to just make sure that you give yourself the freedom when you state something about yourself. So you can say quite happily, my message is that we are working with all different genres of games. At the moment, we're focusing on X, Y, and Z. But there is such a thing as bad PR. I've heard of people getting bad PR for being bad employers. And that stain can follow you around for decades. Even if you've changed your senior personnel, you'll find that a company's reputation, once it's had a bit of damage about being a bad employer, for example, is not good. Equally, if you lie about your performance, or if you lie about forward-looking information, that can get you into trouble too, because you get found out. Lies get found out. I'm all about, yes, don't say it if it doesn't need to be said, but do not lie. It will get you into so much trouble, and so many people don't take that advice and do get themselves into tricky situations, and then you've tarnished your reputation. So do you remember that thought process I told you earlier on, when you're going through those things that you want to say about yourself? Those are the sort of things you want to be thinking about. I need to be authentic. I need to be transparent. I need to make sure that people see me for what I am. And sometimes in some journeys of leaders, you see them talk about the difficult times. Certainly Mehmet from Graham Games talked about the fact that, he had been, down to the last pennies in the bank, but he kept going and he persevered. So I hope that goes some way to answering that question.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask you something. You talked about the blogs. So like 6 years ago, gaming blogs or games blogs are more common, but they are becoming more and more uncommon these days. Why? Why? I will just ask this. Because you said, I'm sorry for interrupting, because you
Yeah.
said it's really good to have a blog to tell your story, but it's becoming more and more uncommon to see game developers blogs these days.
It is. And honestly, it's a number of reasons. The thousands and hundreds of thousands of indie developers don't have a lot of time to do this, and we're all scrabbling for time, especially in the pandemic, which is why I emphasize that you need to put some time and thought into these things. Another thing is that a lot of people don't see that as a priority. We have a lot of things calling on our time. We have a lot of things prioritizing us. But what we find down the line is, let's say, you've got this great game, you're looking for investment or you're looking to sell, and you've got nothing other than the game. You've got no footprint, you've got no media, you've got nothing that says anything about you as an organization and anything about you as a company. That leaves you a bit soulless. And if you look at just looking at the investment route, the investors want to know the people that they're dealing with. They want to know the teams that they're working with. They want to know the vision that those people have. And so if you're thinking even just simply about that, then a blog is a really simple way of starting that process. But this is the thing I was saying, Seda. They people don't think about this early on and early enough. And another reason is that people just don't think that they're interesting. They just don't think that their game would, or their blog would be read. And maybe it won't to start with, but it's interesting to see how these things do start to get a readership. The other thing I'd also say is everyone's looking for employees, and employees are often looking for another creative outlet. I was hoping that somebody would say, but you don't have a blog, and I don't have a blog, and I'll tell you why I don't have a blog. And my employees want to write my blog, but we do a lot of writing for other people, and we put we are like chameleons. So, 1 minute we put the hat on and we're a hyper casual game developer. The next minute we'll put a hat on and we are writing for a AI SaaS platform. If people came and saw a blog that I'd written, they think, well, they won't understand my technical game or my SAP platform. So there are a lot of reasons why I don't blog, and you can make those decisions too. But it's good to go through the thought process of thinking about your blog.
Yeah, actually, I think a blog for a game company is, yeah, exactly. It's a really great idea. And actually, I really like reading blogs of the game developers. So one of the examples I can give is Subnautica. So it was an early access game, and they created a great blog on Steam. So every part of the development, they share with the gamers, and they create a nearly perfect game for everyone who contributed to that blog. They commented and they changed some stuff. So it was a really high point for a game company. They got some really great Metacritics on that game. So it's a great way to promote your game too.
Absolutely. And that interactivity is so interesting and so important. You often find that you're building up these amazing communities of players right from
Exactly.
the start. And a blog does play really well into community. And I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people ask me about, do we do community work and community content? And we don't. We leave community to the community experts, but there is that crossover with blogs and getting involved, and getting people on board that way too.
Yeah. We have another question from Yağmur. She asks, does telling the developing process as a blog post of the game to audience has a positive effect on PR? For instance, challenges developers manage to overcome. Is that relevant to PR or not?
So did you say writing about the challenges?
Yeah, has a positive effect on PR.
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
absolutely. And do you remember I was saying about being authentic and being transparent? We all know when we're on games forums and we see people jump into games forums and try to sell us stuff, and we know they don't know anything about what we're doing, and it's so obvious, and it's annoying. I think the beautiful thing about this industry is that we are very transparent about the challenges we face. And we're also equally transparent about when we find new tools or new methods and things that have worked for us, and sharing those. That's something I see in games much more than in any industry. I see competitors share tools and share challenges and share how they overcame them with each other, to actually further each other and help each other. And that challenges, and it adds authenticity. It shows perseverance and persistence, and those are things that we all have in this industry. So yes, really interesting reads as well.
Okay, we have another question. Actually, two questions. They are nearly the same. Is there an optimum budget or any ideal time for PR for a new game as a startup?
Okay, is there an optimum budget? Is there an ideal time? Well, I think you should start from ideal timings. You should start thinking about your PR before you even start thinking about engaging a professional company. Um, Having a knowledge and an understanding of what you would like to get across. Our budgets, and I'll give you an example of our budgets. Our budgets start at around the sort of $5,000 US dollar mark, and they go upwards from there per month. So the way PR agencies work is typically on a retainer, and we become like part of your team. And I can talk to you a bit if you want any advice about how to recruit agencies and stuff like that. We're very lucky where we are. We don't take on a lot of clients, and we select the people that we work with, and we decide who we'd like to work with. So we're in a really nice position to do that. And I think you need to talk to a PR agency and make sure they understand the industry and understand what you're trying to achieve, and have a certain amount of knowledge and case studies, examples, and testimonials. If you're talking about bringing on a PR agency, talk to some of their clients, find out what they've done for them, ask difficult questions, because it's a significant investment, not only from the money perspective, but also from your time. No time will be wasted if you spend a lot of your first PR dollars, whether it be internal or external, on your messaging and your positioning and your branding and how you want to be seen. And those are all things that I've just talked to you about that you can do yourself.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jackie. Thanks a lot for joining. It was really nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too. And I
Uh,
hope you all continue to stay safe and well, and hopefully we'll get through this horrible pandemic and see each other all in person. And as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions and happy to help. I'm a big believer in indies, in the whole indie development community. So I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.